Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey man, great to see you. So today we're back with another podcast, and it's in a similar vein to our Jurassic Park podcast where we covered the first three films. We're back again with this franchise. So I'm going to pass over to Callum to describe what movies we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, as me and Matthew have discussed throughout the last few episodes of this lockdown, we're knocking off the big hitters on our film bucket list.
Absolutely.
We're trying to get through the big staple franchises, and Jurassic Park was one that I really wanted to finish, especially after finishing the Jurassic Park trilogy. I was really excited to watch the remaining films in this franchise, and so I encouraged Matthew to postpone some ideas that we had for some podcasts so that we could see this franchise through. So today
Absolutely,
we're
man.
talking Jurassic World and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. And maybe when we're done with that, as this actually isn't a finished franchise, we can maybe talk about our aspirations and our hopes for Jurassic
Absolutely.
World Dominion.
Love that, love that. Yeah, so we've sort of done this a few times in the channel before where we've like covered franchises before another movie comes out. Like we've done it even our first episode, the MCU. I think we did like our hopes and aspirations for Avengers Endgame and stuff. And we've done it with the Terminator franchises before Dark Fate. So I'm really looking forward to this one because as you said, the first three films I think we pretty much liked for the most part. Like we had a good time with them. And I'm really excited for these ones because these films do really well at the box office, don't they? Like I think these both have like 1.1 to 1.3 billion between for both of them each. So I mean, that says it all, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you have such a successful franchise and then take a bit of a hiatus, there's this huge draw for the
Completely.
box office for people to reunite with this sense of nostalgia. I mean, obviously the sequel, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, didn't do particularly well critically. We can maybe drill down into why that is. But yeah, certainly financially, these were huge hitters of the 21st century.
Absolutely, Callum. And yeah, just before we start, thank you to everyone who's recently supported us, who's liked, subscribed, commented, shared, all that good stuff. Email us with any podcast suggestions or questions at moviematespodcast@gmail.com. Callum or myself will definitely get back to you on that one. So yeah, shall we hop in with Jurassic World then, buddy? Yeah,
Yes,
let's
definitely.
do it.
So this is, bringing this huge franchise into the 21st century. We saw in 2001 the final film of that original Jurassic Park trilogy was Jurassic Park 3. I'm struggling to speak today.
Don't worry about it.
So this film is the one that really takes place in complete modernity. This is one that's within our lifetime, and you can see the huge technological advances, especially in the CGI,
Mhm.
which for me is actually a huge drawback of this film, because like movies these days have huge budgets, which then they funnel into CGI instead of just getting incredible looking practical effects. Because I
You're
feel like the
yeah,
charm of the entire first trilogy was the mix of CGI and practical effects. They only used CGI when they absolutely had to, and I think there's this sort of weird stigma that practical effects are cheap looking, and it's because it was because of limits of robotics back in the day. I
Mhm.
mean, you could have exceptional looking animatronics these days that don't look cheap looking, and they'd still be cheaper than CGI,
Yeah,
and it would be
yeah.
able to maintain the magic that the original trilogy had.
Absolutely, buddy. I agree completely. And it is sort of sad because I do miss the use of really fantastic prosthetics and the from the original first two films. I looked I had originally seen this film when it came out in the cinema, and then this is my second rewatch of it. And I think I had noticed maybe there was like one or two scenes. I think maybe the one that stands out for me with the prosthetics was like the dying dinosaur, which like the Brachiosaurus, I think it was, and that was really good. Like the prosthetics was fantastic. So I wish I had seen more of the prosthetics, and the CGI is very good, but it's not like I don't think it's not good enough for it not to warrant prosthetics, if you know what I mean. Like I think the film really misses them.
Yeah, I would say probably the worst looking dinosaurs CGI wise are probably the Velociraptors, which is kind of disappointing because they're probably the most prominently displayed dinosaur in
Yeah,
this film, aside from the is it Indominus Rex?
Indominus Rex, yeah. And I suppose on the subject of the Indominus Rex, I think that's a fantastic idea, sort of to bring this franchise forward into the modern day. Like it takes the idea of like humans playing God from the first film and expands upon it. And I personally thought it was a fantastic sort of it's the biggest like it's the closest thing we've seen to like a villain dinosaur, I suppose. So I thought it was great.
Yeah, I would say this film is probably as you said, it, you know, with there being sort of a villainous dinosaur that is actually, you know, wreaking havoc. The previous films that we'd seen really, like, at their core had human villains, and that, yeah, this is probably the closest that comes to the dinosaurs actually being the villains of the film.
Yeah, in many ways, it is quite similar to Jurassic Park 3 in the sense of like the Spinosaurus, I suppose. But you know, yeah, but I think this film does it better because like we see sort of there are some like ambiguity in the human characters as well. Like Vincent D'Onofrio's character, you know, for all his flaws, I actually ended up really liking him, to be honest with you. He was one of my favorites in the film. And, you know, even like Dr. Henry Wu as well, he's a bit of an ambiguous character, and we'll see where his character goes in Dominion. It'll be exciting. But, you know, one thing I really wanted to mention about this film, and I can't give it enough credit, like, I think this is probably the most well casted action movie of the last 10 years. There's not one real performance that I think's poor. You know, there's it's such a great cast. So Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard, Vincent D'Onofrio, Jake Johnson is my favorite character in this. I
I
love
love
him.
Jake
He's
Johnson
so
so
good.
much.
Like, what are your thoughts on the casting? Because whoever's role it was, this casting agency, they nailed it.
Yeah, I fully agree that every performance is incredible, but the one person I think is miscast, not because he does a bad performance, but I just don't think I don't think he's capable of that emotion, is Nick Robinson. Because I would say for at least half of his performance, he's playing a dickhead, and
Yeah,
I just don't
yeah.
think Nick Robinson has it in him.
He's from Love Simon, right?
Yeah, love Simon and what oh from Melissa and Joey, which like is a garbage sitcom, but you know that's my frame of reference. But yeah, you know he's always a sweet guy. You know he's always
Talented guy. Yeah.
family and friend orientated. You know, and it just I don't think he can convincingly portray an asshole.
That's the thing. He seems like such a nice guy as well, and not maybe not in the film. And I think maybe his line delivery is not great. I don't know how early on in his career this film was, but for me, it's very clear that he's still like finding his feet as an actor. For me personally, I actually think the kid who was in Iron Man 3, I can't remember his name. Do you
Ty
know his name?
Simpkins.
Ty Simpkins. I think he's one of the best child actors going about, and I think he's fantastic in this film. To be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as we have mentioned that, you know, that this is entirely new an entirely new cast, you know, of exclusively new characters aside from Henry Wu. So it is pretty exceptional that they were able to introduce all these new characters, which Jurassic Park 2 and 3, you know, tried to do and somewhat failed. You know, people are not big fans of, you know, Julianne Moore's character.
Yeah.
You know, what the fuck's his name? Vince Vaughn's character, you know, and there are several introductions that people just haven't been a fan of. But I'm pretty sure, you know, everyone widely considered this, you know, a pretty exceptional like reignition of a franchise. You
I
know,
can
sort
see
of,
why. Yeah.
yeah, you know, this film came out the same year as, you know, Star Wars: The Force Awakens, and I think it's an infinitely better reignition of the franchise because
Such a great
this
point.
doesn't like fall back on rehashing as much as The Force Awakens had to do.
I agree, but Callum completely. And I was thinking about this last night as I was going to bed. Like 2015 was the year for blockbusters. You know, Age of Ultron was the most hyped sequel of the last decade, in my opinion. We have The Force Awakens and Jurassic World. Like that 2015 was great. It didn't feel like that at the time for me because, you know, Force Awakens and Jurassic World, like I wasn't engaged with those franchises previously, whereas with Age of Ultron, you know, we both were, I suppose. But no, like looking back, I think Jurassic World shits on Force Awakens, in my opinion.
100%. Because I mean, you know, the Force Awakens is, you know, just a new hope with a few extra layers.
Yeah,
Whereas this film, I would say, is the most different film in this franchise since Jurassic Park 1. And, you know, it never, you know, needs to fall back on rehashing, which we can talk about in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, because I
yeah,
feel that it's, you know, essentially a complete rehash of The Lost World. You know, it is, in my opinion, exceptionally similar to that.
it is.
Uh,
Yeah,
but you know, like this is the only one that, you know, introduced new characters successfully. And it sort of feels like in the vein of like Dark Fate that this is sort of a direct sequel to the first film, because I
Yeah.
think easily, it's set on the same island. Like this is Jurassic Park Site A rather than in the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, where they were on, a different island, which was Jurassic Park Site B.
Hmm.
So this is the one that feels most authentic to the franchise established
Absolutely.
in the first film.
I think it's a thing for both of us. I think we both have a particular liking to films that sort of harken back to the original and try something different. Like you and I both love Dark Fate, I think, and I think I'm sensing the same enjoyment for this film. I think this film has an incredible reboot that works for new and old fans alike. This film it's smart because Colin Trevorrow, I think, is the guy who directed it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's clear like he loves the franchise because we see the use of the classic old score, which I really like, and it's something that I sort of wish Avengers Endgame did a bit more. Like Avengers Endgame did use the score of the previous Marvel movies, but it doesn't reuse it. Like, do you know what I mean in that? Like, if you have a good score, reuse it. I think, and like we've said, I think the film's really well cast, and even the late Irfan Khan, he's just pure class in this film. I think they maybe wanted to try like a Ian Malcolm kind of vibe, and I got that completely. I think he nailed it.
Yeah, this was another film that I watched with my brother, which I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Every time he's excited to watch a film, it's always a great experience because every time that character was on screen, especially when he was flying his helicopter and going like we don't need anybody else because he
Yeah.
was just so overconfident in
Yeah.
his flying abilities. Like
Yeah.
it was unbelievably hilarious.
It was good, and the film is really subtly humorous. Jake Johnson's character, like Jurassic Park T-shirt, was hilarious. I think you have the same T-shirt, don't you? Or a similar T-shirt.
Yeah, pretty much. But what this film does exceptionally is the dialogue because
Oh yeah.
you always feel whenever you start seeing a character, the it's just as though the universe only starts when the camera is on them, and they sort of like artificially put you in the middle of a conversation between two characters, and it doesn't feel authentic. But I would say the most authentic, like irrelevant, weird conversation that they've just like placed us in
Yeah.
is when Jake Johnson is talking to his coworker, and he says like, oh yeah, I've known him since he was 13, so he really feels like my real dad, and like they sort of like plonk you in the middle of that conversation, but it feels completely authentic because it's just so
Absolutely.
weird, and you're
Yeah,
like, that is
completely,
what
buddy.
coworkers would talk about.
Yeah, it is, and like I think don't we see like sort of toy dinosaurs on his desk that he has like OCD in the way they're arranged as well. I love that, and like he's one of the characters. We'll mention this in why Fault we. Well, I don't know if you preferred Fallen Kingdom, but why potentially Fallen Kingdom was seen was more critically panned in this film. Like they didn't bring back Jake Johnson, and I think he's one of the best parts of this film for comedic levity and for generally like heartfelt moments. We see he's the only one that stays behind to help Owen and Claire, which I thought was quite nice as well. And he goes in
And
for the
then
kiss.
he gets absolutely shut down.
Yeah, that was another great moment for me. Like I think he's a really underrated actor.
Yeah, he is thankfully coming back for Dominion.
Thank God.
But I love him in every single thing he's in. New Girl especially, and obviously as Peter B. Parker.
He's
He
got a
hasn't
great
given a
voice,
bad
doesn't he?
performance that I've ever seen.
He's got a great voice, doesn't he?
Exceptionally wonderful. Because he just always seems like, I mean, in New Girl he sort of plays like a slob with like no career aspirations, and like he succeeded in law school, but he chooses to be a bartender because he doesn't want to do anything else with his life. And I don't know, he may sometimes get a bit typecast as that kind of character because that's sort of his interpretation uh of Spider-Man. He's sort of like the Nick Miller version of Peter Parker.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he is sometimes somewhat typecast, but like you know, you want that personality to be your career. Like that's the funniest kind of character you can play.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And I would like to see his acting range be stretched a little bit in the future because I think he definitely has the potential to really get into some big movies. Like I think he's got a good career ahead of him.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll cross our fingers for a Spider-Verse film.
Hope so,
An
man.
actual Spider-Verse film where the live action ones and the animated ones cross over. And I'm sure that they could explain away the fact that whenever he crosses over into the MCU, he becomes a human and he's just played by Jake Johnson.
Yeah, I hope so. And
Like that'd be
I
great.
kind of hope they do. Like, I know we want Tobey Maguire back for the Spider-Verse, but I don't want them to say that Peter B. Parker is Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Like, I don't want that. I want that to be an authentic Jake Johnson inspired character. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I because I feel like he is in the similar vein of the Tobey Maguire character, but like his prime version of, I mean, we're just talking about Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse,
Go
man, but
for it,
that's
it's
fine.
fine. Yeah.
But like the part in which he was a happy confident hero is the Tobey Maguire version, but then that's where like the timeline changes and it branches off and he becomes like a sad loser.
Yeah.
So like that's, I mean, that is sort of how you would describe Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, but he was still like a superhero in his prime, and then obviously Jake Johnson's Peter B. Parker isn't. So I think they're easily describable as different characters.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And back to Jurassic World.
Sure, yeah. So the events of Jurassic World 1 to 3 are clearly public knowledge because they reference, the events of the San Diego incident, and the deaths at Jurassic Park from the first film. So, and they're referenced on the news. So how is InGen still functioning? Like how are all of those superiors not in prison?
Yeah, I have the same note in my notes actually. Like, why would anyone think Jurassic World is a good idea given what happened last time?
Yeah, which is sort of like whenever I have to think about that, I'm like, oh, is that like has this? I think this franchise has maybe tired itself out because like I don't think this franchise has ever reached the success of the first film, critically, financially, and audience satisfaction wise.
Yeah.
I've never thought, oh, I need to see more. I was fully satisfied with the first ever film, and I think that would have been, so like sometimes studios need to know when to stop, and
Yeah.
sometimes whenever I'm thinking, my God, they're still making another part
Yeah.
with more dinosaurs.
Mhm.
Like this is the fourth film about that, and there's a
Yeah.
fifth one, and now there's going to be a sixth one. Like at that point, I was like, I think this franchise is a bit tired out.
I'm looking forward to see what they have to do with Dominion. I think that could be a different venture for the franchise in a sort of Planet of the Apes style, because we've seen like the Planet of the Apes films like that they've just got better and better and better, and I can't wait to talk about those. Like the modern trilogy one day with you as well as the older films. But no, I do agree with you, buddy. It does concern me a little bit that it might be tiring itself out, because I don't really want to see it tire itself out. Like, I think this is such a great collection of characters. I mean, we haven't really talked about Chris Pratt or Bryce Dallas Howard. Like, I think this is and this is a bit of a hot take. I don't know, because we have talked a lot about superhero movies here in the channel, but I think Chris Pratt is better in this role than in any Marvel movie. Just my opinion. What about you?
Yeah, because I mean, Chris Pratt is naturally funny, in the sense that, he just goes about his business and then like makes quips here and there, in person and like say in this film. And then to just make him like an overtly, explicitly comedic character in the Marvel movies, I don't know, it feels inauthentic sometimes. I think his best performance is stoic and serious and then can deliver jokes,
Yeah.
because that I think that's usually where the best comedy comes from, where it's sort of just deadpan, sarcastic. But Star Lord's like telling jokes, like it's a different kind of comedy that
Yeah.
I think in this film, Chris Pratt, I agree with you, works better.
And Bryce Dallas Howard, like, I think she's really great in this. I think she has a really great like physical performance as well. Like during the action scene, you can feel like her and Chris Pratt, like they can really act that well. And I just think she's really great. What do you think, man? Because this is the first film I've seen her in since Spider-Man 3, I think,
Spider-Man
for me
3.
to see it.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
no, she's
I don't think I know her from anything else. I mean, I'm sure oh, she was in 50-50, which you haven't seen, but
I have seen it. I've seen
it
it.
stars. Oh, you have seen 50-50?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She plays Joseph Gordon-Levitt's bitch girlfriend.
Yeah, who leaves him when he has cancer? Yeah, doesn't she?
Yeah. So in this film, I would say until the third act, she's probably like, portrayed as kind of a damsel in distress, but that's maybe to, maybe that's so that they can so heavily subvert the audience's expectations, because, up until the third act, when she becomes incredibly capable, in some ways unbelievably so, while running in heels,
Yeah.
maybe it was just that they were sort of, doing like a bait and switch where they, where you thought she was one kind of character, and then in the third act they turn around your perception. but Reese Witherspoon has sort of made comments on this kind of female character, and it connected with me in one of the last shots of the film. Even after they've defeated the dinosaurs, Bryce Dallas Howard like turns to Chris Pratt and says, "So what do we do now?" And like
Yeah,
Reese Witherspoon has been an outspoken critic of that kind of female character.
I get. Yeah, I can
Sort of just
understand why.
relies on assistance and advice of the male character, which is the one way in which I would criticize this character. But I cannot
It's a
fault
great
Bryce
point.
Dallas Howard's performance.
It's a great point, buddy, and it's probably why I find Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman so compelling. Like you never see her in any of the films that she's in, even the team up movies, saying to like Batman or whatever, like, "What do we do now?" Like she's always like, do you know what I mean? She's always empowering and stuff. And I think maybe that's where I think the character of Claire gets better in the second film. Strangely, like she has more to do, I think, and she's certainly like more sort of capable maybe in the action scenes as well, and
Yeah.
it is definitely a criticism that's there for this film completely.
But I mean, yeah, I sort of sounded a bit critical, but to be fair, I don't think many people in the world, men and women, everyone included, would be capable of handling this situation. So
Yeah,
to even see her as
yeah.
like an incredibly successful businesswoman is better than a lot of portrayals, and more accurate to society, and that where women are incredibly successful in business.
Hmm.
To even see that kind of character, you know, I wouldn't expect anyone that I know to be capable of, going up against a dinosaur. So, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
get you.
saying that portraying her as, partially incapable of handling that situation makes her, a damsel in
I
distress,
get
because
you.
that's not
100%.
really fair
I get you,
of
man.
me to comment.
100%, buddy. And one thing I wanted to mention about this film is how I think the set design is and mixed with the CGI is so well done in terms of like the Jurassic Park, or sorry, the Jurassic. Well, I suppose it is. Is it called Jurassic Park or Jurassic World in the film? I can't remember.
It's Jurassic World, but I think like they say that the gates that open out are from the original Jurassic Park, but I think they must have changed it to Jurassic World though.
Okay, I'll call it Jurassic World, but the theme park of Jurassic World, it feels like it could exist in our world. You know, with the gyrospheres, they're so cool, and like, do you know what I mean? Like the monorail, like it feels like Disney World for me. It brought me back to that.
Yeah, because I do think that largely, especially with like this sort of sea-based dinosaurs, it is meant to be sort of a SeaWorld
Yeah.
parody.
Oh yeah,
With
definitely. Yeah, yeah. The Mosasaurus and
I
stuff.
believe there's
Yeah.
like a famous like big blue whale or some other animal called Shamu or something,
Oh yeah,
isn't
Killer
isn't
Whale
that?
Shamu. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the killer whale. So I think that that large aquatic dinosaur is maybe meant to be sort of a parallel to that.
Oh yeah, that Mosasaurus, I think it was. Maybe we'll just call it whatever it was. Uh, it was awesome. It looked cool. It was huge, wasn't it? And like I'm sort of we'll get on to it's like Ex Machina at the end, I suppose. But no, like I said, I think the whole like Jurassic World theme park is great, and just it's such a great environment as well because we sort of see like a lot of it is just shops, isn't it? It's a lot of just dino merchandise everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, even when like there's a huge mass panic and people being like picked off by pterodactyls, you just hear over the intercom like, "And now visit our gift shop." Like,
Yeah,
maybe not the
exactly. You can
biggest
imagine that
concern
happening.
right now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yes. So, as the Indominus Rex is released, the security guards and the sort of, like private military of Jurassic World are slowly picked off. And that was sort of where I realized that this film, whereas the other films in the franchise act as sort of like a scientific cautionary tale with a bit of action, with the dinosaurs, this film is, largely a horror film. And
I
that
agree.
it was sort of the moment where, like the soldiers are being slowly picked off, and you see
Heart
their
rates.
hearts flatline.
Yeah,
Sort of like every time it turned to a red flatline, that really screamed like horror film to me.
absolutely, buddy. I agree completely, and I actually have that point. Like, I think this film, in a similar sense to how I felt the first one succeeded, it fits into so many genres so well. Like, I think this film could be an action movie, sci-fi, and horror film as well, especially. And it's got comedic timing in there to make up for that as well. And and I think the score really adds to that. Like, and a lot of the like sort of a lot of the attention and the sort of attraction to the Indominus Rex is that like you know, it's sort of mysterious and it can camouflage, so you can't really see it coming. And a lot of the like jump scare, because there are quite a few actually jump scares in this film that actually got me at the cinema when I watched it. Like it largely based on the Indominus Rex, so I thought that was great. Like I love the horror aspects that you pointed out, buddy.
Yeah, and you know, as we mentioned, you know, Claire's nephews are roaming about the place, and you know, her sister Karen seems quite pissed off that the kids are being like sort of left unsupervised by Claire. But I mean, why are you expecting her to like take an entire day
Yeah.
out of she's in control, as they said, of 20,000 people, and maintaining their level of enjoyment at the attraction. So I mean, why would you expect her to like be going on all the rides with the kids?
Yeah, it doesn't strike me as the type of place where there's room for a take your nephews to work day, does it?
Yeah, I mean, she's a high-powered businesswoman. I really think it was a weird expectation. But there's one moment with the nephews, which is when they're in the gyrosphere, and the safety video starring Jimmy
Oh
Fallon
yeah, I
comes up,
forgot about
and
that until I
I
watched it.
audibly groaned.
Jimmy Fallon has grown on me, but see, him and Kimmel, I have a weird sort of. I do enjoy watching their interviews, but I think Kimmel is the most overrated interviewer ever. He just makes jokes and doesn't really care about the questions. I think he's a very selfish interviewer, but I don't like in a weird way. Like he's not. I don't think he's a selfish person because he's very charitable. But I mean, like he question wise, it seems like he just asks questions that don't delve deep into the actor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I mean, I don't think I could. Obviously, I couldn't do a better job, but I think we're free to criticize because we're not being paid millions of dollars to do it. So that's where I sort of go,
Yeah.
oh, should I criticize this person for just doing their job? But they're doing their job badly and they're being paid very well for it. So I think it's fair to criticize. I think Conan is an exceptional.
I love
Conan
Conan.
O'Brien is an exceptional interviewer, and I would say James Corden's pretty interesting. He
I
plays a
like
lot of
James
fun
Corden. He's
games.
grown on me as well a lot.
Yeah, but Jimmy Kimmel, yeah, I agree with you. Sort of watching the Joaquin Phoenix interview,
Painful.
like apparently that was partially staged, in that apparently that blooper was actually a joke on the director Todd Phillips. Like
Okay.
apparently Joaquin Phoenix and the cinematographer like were playing a practical joke, but Jimmy Kimmel didn't know that, so he was still being a dick by showing the outtake. And yeah, I agree with you. He doesn't really seem to care about the guests, and he's sort of just trying to be funny and be famous himself when he isn't. But like
Yeah.
Jimmy Fallon, I just find so arrogant. He doesn't like he doesn't let anyone finish their stories. Like there's clips of him with Dakota Johnson where she's just trying to like get one sentence out, and he asks her four questions during it.
Yeah.
He really is desperate for the airtime. Like he doesn't want like his guests to get like two words in.
Yeah. I suppose it's different for us because sort of British talk shows aren't really to the same extent. Like we've sort of grown up with like the peak of talk show hosts with Graham Norton. Like it's hard to get a better than Graham Norton show really for me, and I suppose for you as well. I know you're a big fan, so I suppose when you compare it to Fallon, it is a bit of a letdown.
Yeah, because I mean, like Graham Norton has realized that the genius is, getting a bunch of guests and getting them to mix together, have fun, be casual, and tell some fun stories and have a good time.
Mhm.
But Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon like
It's so formal.
are not great interviewers, but they're always like one to one for some reason.
It's
They're
so
doing
formal.
a one
Yeah.
to one interview and don't know how to do it.
Yeah, like they I suppose they get the odd time, like with the Avengers cast and stuff where it's multiple, but in that case, like they're not really interviews. It's just like, oh, what do you feel about the movie? How'd it go? Are you looking forward to the premiere? That's all it really is. So, like
Yeah,
you said about the Joaquin Phoenix interview, and I think he did a interview with yeah, he did an interview with Kanye West, and you know, it's not great because he kind of like don't get me wrong, Kanye's said some really bad things in the past, but like he does sort of mock him a little bit, which wasn't great. And I don't know, it's just me. I'm sure I'm sure they're lovely people, but and I know they're
yeah.
very charitable. But as talk show hosts, I'm more of a Norton guy.
Yeah, and also like Graham Norton, makes every single one of his guests feel equally important.
Yeah.
He'll treat a Hollywood star the same as like a local British celebrity. But like Jimmy Kimmel, if he has the entire Avengers Infinity War cast on, he'll sort of like pay attention to Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland and Chris Evans, and then ignore like literally everybody else.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
80% of the screen time will go to the big stars. And I'm sure that's partly his producer's fault, but I'm sure he has, input on questions.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good chat actually on Talks to Host. I'll try to time code that in the description because it's something I think there's a lot of room for us to talk more about because we've talked about like Joker as well and sort of how that sort of has developed with the talk show host as well. But no, do you wanna head back to Jurassic World then, buddy?
Yes, so it's around this time that we sort of see a potential romance blossom between Owen and Claire,
Yeah,
and we're aware that they've been on a date, prior to the events of the film, and there's sort of this like lustful hatred between them,
yeah.
and there's very ill-timed kiss that comes later in the film, that I guess we can talk about later on. But do you actually think that this relationship would be a success? Because we see that it does. It doesn't work the first time they try going on a date. It doesn't work, when they try their hand at a relationship, as we see in Fallen Kingdom. But, there's still hints in Fallen Kingdom that they have feelings for each other. But did you actually sense a romance, like a potential successful romance between the two?
That's really interesting, Callum, because I definitely sense chemistry there. I think the actors mingle really well together, but I thought it was more of a friend platonic relationship than a romantic one for me. What about yourself?
Yeah, I agree. It felt a bit inauthentic, especially the kiss.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe it was just incredibly ill timed, and if it had come, as the last scene of the film, I would have maybe found it more authentic. But it did just feel like a romance. Like, oh, we have two attractive leads. One's male, one's female. By logic, of course, they have a relationship, which I suppose is maybe them trying to replicate the success of sort of the romance presented in Jurassic Park 1 between Sam Neill and Laura Dern. But they had a pre-existing relationship that just continued in the film,
yeah,
whereas here they try to establish a romance, and I think they somewhat fail.
yeah. I completely agree, buddy. Actually, yeah, for sure.
Yes. So you mentioned that you enjoyed the character played by Vincent D'Onofrio, and
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
we found out that he is probably the most villainous human character, probably on par with Dr. Henry Wu. I know
Mhm.
you consider them both morally ambiguous, but I consider them, morally condemnable.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that like Vincent D'Onofrio's tan is like straight out of a Michael Bay film.
Vincent D'Onofrio, I'm just used to seeing him in like in as Kingpin and Daredevil, and he's actually got very comedic in this film as well. Like he's got some great lines in there, and yeah, the tan is straight from Michael Bay film. You're definitely right. And
Like
like
he is glistening like Megan Fox bending over a car in
yeah,
Transformers.
yeah, and I think he definitely can be condemned for his actions, but watching the film back again, like for the first three quarters of it, you sort of think, okay, maybe he is trying to save people for the out of the goodness of his heart. Like he's of the belief that ferry everyone out of there and then we'll try and kill the Indominus Rex, which I think is probably the best idea rather than just let it roam about the park and kill people. But then when you realize that, oh no, he's actually in like a weird shady deal with Henry Wu to like save like DNA strands of the Indominus Rex and other animals, then you definitely can't condemn him for that. But I thought his initial idea, and I don't agree with him like weaponizing the raptors or anything, but I do agree with him trying to use the raptors and other solutions to try and kill the Indominus Rex because it was going to kill a lot of people.
Yeah, like I fully agree with you. Yeah, obviously the weaponization of them for military purposes is obviously
Yeah.
condemnable, but
Mm.
it was a pretty admirable plan. But I do think that he was like I don't think he cared that much about getting people off the island. Like I think he would have set the Raptors loose, regardless.
Yeah,
But
probably.
if he could get literally every person off the island, then set the Raptors on the Indominus Rex, he does enact that plan and it's unsuccessful. To the fault of his soldiers. But it was a pretty admirable plan, and had it been successful, I would have felt better about that character
Yeah,
probably.
man, completely, buddy. And I don't have that much left to say apart from the ending, buddy. So I'm happy to go by whatever remarks you have.
Yeah, just a little bit. So, one character that we haven't spoken about is Zara, played by Katie McGrath, who is, if you don't know, Morgana from Merlin, and she plays the caretaker for Claire's two nephews in this film, and her death is so horrific, and
It's
it's played
actually
so
brutal.
comedically.
Yeah,
They play it as though it's like say this is sort of, in a similar vein to the character, uh, in say The Lost World, Jurassic Park. The villain of that film is, sort of very slowly killed and picked away at the end of that film, and she's killed in such a horrific and
Yeah,
hilarious way, as though she deserved it. And like the only thing bad about her character is Katie McGrath's horrible English accent. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
like that's the only questionable thing about the character. Regardless of that, the character is incredibly sweet. All she does is try to look out for the boys, care for the boys, and she gets absolutely mauled. Like she's like picked up, dropped, picked up again, dropped, picked up again, brought into the water,
She's drowning.
drowned,
Yeah,
and then she's eaten by the huge aquatic dinosaur.
yeah. Like you think she's gonna like be pecked apart or something or fall to her death, but then you think she's gonna drown, and then like she just gets snapped up like that. It's brutal, man. Out of every Jurassic Park death, I think that one was the most brutal.
Yeah, and
He doesn't
I
deserve
really
it.
don't know why they didn't like reserve that for a villain, because it's a hilarious death, and like that's sort of the death where you would normally be like, haha, comeuppance,
Yeah.
like, oh, like they've received just desserts for their actions, and
Mhm.
you're like, well, that was hilarious, but she did not deserve that
I know.
whatsoever.
Yeah, it was funny, man, but I don't know if it was intentionally funny. It probably was, but I don't know.
Yes, so it's pretty soon after that, with very little emotion. No one mourns Zara's death. Let's just put that out there. No
We
one mourns
do,
her
we
death.
do though.
Yeah, we do. R.I.P. Uh, I mean, we haven't even commented. Like, I said briefly, but like her English accent is trash, isn't it?
It's not great. Well, we'll get into Toby
Because
Jones's American accent.
oh yes, we will. But like, it just seems that Hollywood doesn't like Irish actors, because I've never heard an Irish accent in a film unless it's for like, you
Saoirse
know,
Ronan
uh,
or
you
something.
know, yeah, unless even Saoirse Ronan, like, aside from
American. Yeah.
Brooklyn, which I haven't seen, I don't think she ever really uses her Irish accent. It just seems that Hollywood doesn't like Irish accents because they
Mm,
consider it like difficult to understand, which
yeah.
is uh,
Liam
which just
Neeson has
isn't
to do an
accurate.
American accent for all his movies, doesn't he?
Who?
Liam Neeson has to do a
Liam.
pretty much American accent, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the Taken franchise, well, actually, I don't think I have heard Liam Neeson do an American accent. Actually, I think Northern Irish, because we sort of have a somewhat Americanized pronunciation for certain things.
Yeah.
I think Northern Irish actors are able to succeed in Hollywood. With Jamie Dornan in a lot of television projects, he's allowed to maintain his
Nesbitt
Northern
as
Irish
well.
accent. Yeah, Jimmy Nesbitt and Liam Neeson, I think, routinely. If you're from the Republic of Ireland, like Katie McGrath and other actors, they're either forced to do an English accent or an American accent,
Yeah.
and it's never good.
Yeah, I
It's
know,
like
man.
it's always bad, and you
Yeah.
can always pick it. So I'm like, well, if you hired her because she's a good actress, why aren't you letting her do her actual accent?
Yeah. What's Colin Farrell's American accent? Is Bullseye like in Daredevil?
Oh, he has an Irish accent in Daredevil.
Oh, does he? Okay, what's he like in Artemis Fowl? He has a British accent, doesn't he? Like an English accent, right?
No, he's Irish in
Is
that as
he?
well.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Colin Farrell skirts through.
Yeah,
Yeah, he has an Irish accent pretty consistently. But like, you do
I
what I
know
mean.
what I
You
mean.
get what I mean. Like, you
100%,
you do see
100%.
that recently. Sorry, you see that a lot.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and Kitty McGrath, I would say her second most famous role after Merlin is probably on Supergirl, where she does an American accent, and
Yeah,
like you can tell she's not American, but you can't overtly tell that she's Irish, I guess.
yeah, and I suppose what another huge example of it is like Michael Fassbender's accent started off as Irish in First Class and then moved to like sort of more English towards the end. Like he just goes completely English accent, and I actually miss his old like Irish accent in First Class because I thought it was great.
Yeah, and he sort of like, obviously the character of Magneto is German by birth, and then sort of, as he travels the globe, he sort of develops a more worldly accent. In the X-Men films, he has an English accent, and then in First Class, as you said, he has an Irish accent. So yeah, I mean, it sort of makes sense for him to have a changing accent, but I would say the First Class one is most authentic to how Michael Fassbender actually sounds, and it
Absolutely.
sounds more worldly, like he's traveled.
Yeah, one thing that always fascinates. I know we've gotten off topic a little bit here throughout the podcast, but it's interesting. Like one thing that fascinates me about Michael Fassbender is that his mother is from Antrim. I thought that was really interesting. Like I didn't know that until I researched it.
Yeah, I mean, not too far from our
Hmm.
neck of the woods.
No, it's not, man. It's not too far. But anyway, back to Jurassic World, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I live in Antrim. Or do you live in like Down or something,
Yeah,
don't you?
yeah. So not too bad. Not too far. Not too far from both of us.
Yes. So we went wildly off topic, but that's fine. So as we said, the characters are not given any time to mourn Zara's death. So very very soon after that, Owen and Claire share this weird brief attempt at a romantic kiss, and like no, like I think it could be excused if in the film someone went like, "Oh, that's weird," or someone like hard cringed and went
Yeah,
like, "Ugh."
yeah.
But like the film just plays it off as normally, and I'm like, this is super awkward. And he probably still stinks of gasoline because like he just like smothered
Doused
himself in
himself
that
in that.
earlier.
Yeah, I know. And I think maybe some of the film's comedic timing, for the most part, it's great. But then in other parts, I think it does feel a little bit confused tonally. Like in like horror or horror-esque scenes or action-esque scenes. Like the odd bit of humor is cool, but then there's a lot of like your boyfriend's a badass and stuff like that, which I thought was some of the line delivery by Nick Robinson. I think wasn't great.
Yes. So you said the remainder of your notes were mainly focused on the ending. Would you
Yeah.
like to share those?
Yeah, so it's weird because when I saw this in the cinema, like I never, as you said, like as you know, like I've never seen any of the previous three films at that point, and I think at the time I absolutely adored the T-Rex reveal by the end. It's sort of like missing throughout the film. Like you see one shot of it, but it's sort of ambiguous. But I think if I would have saw this film for the first time, I would have loved it even more. I thought that was my favorite bit of the film. The T-Rex and the Velociraptor teaming up with the Mosasaurus to take down the Indominus Rex. I thought that was fantastic. What about you?
See, that would probably be my biggest criticism of the film. That
Okay,
sort of
yeah,
having a lot of CGI, opens the door for like sort of dinosaur versus dinosaur action. But that makes the film come across as an action film, which I don't think feels authentic to the franchise. I think it's a science fiction film, a horror film about, the the repercussions morally and literally of the sort of playing God idea.
yeah,
And it's sort of meant to be a cautionary tale, a Frankenstein-esque
yeah,
story. And it kind of just came across as like a CGI punch 'em up, like a Michael Bay film, as I mentioned before, or like one of the like legendary monster films. And by legendary I mean the company, not that they're awesome or something.
yeah, yeah,
The way they're making like Godzilla versus King Kong.
yeah, yeah.
I think it's in that similar vein, and it kind of just removes the human influence from the films. And
I
I'm
respect
not a
that, man.
huge
Yeah,
fan
yeah.
of that.
Yeah, no, I respect your views. Yeah, it is. I suppose it's like a subjective thing. Is that like I can understand why someone would feel like disenfranchised from it because it's not sort of it doesn't tie back to the original. It doesn't feel like the original. So I can 100% respect that. Yeah, yeah,
And it's just because I feel like this film is about humans reacting to dinosaurs rather than the other way around, and to sort of make the final act, or at least the final battle of the final act, a dinosaur versus a dinosaur. it,
yeah,
it just removes the human element entirely, when I think they're actually the most important part, because they're the reason for the dinosaurs creation, and they should be the ones that are trying to fight against it, rather than just bringing in like a less dangerous dinosaur to fight the more dangerous dinosaur. It's like they're both still trying to kill you. So
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
I get you. No, I get you, man. I do get you. It's sort of that sort of scene put into perspective, like how weird the T Rex arms look. I don't know if the T Rex look like that in real life, but the arms are so tiny.
Yeah, I actually like, I don't know, for some reason I must have looked away for like 5 seconds, and I had no idea what happened to the Indominus Rex. Like I had to look it up because I did not see it like being eaten by the like, what would you say, like Mosasaurus or some shit?
Mosasaurus, I think it is. I don't know, but
Mosasaurus, yeah. Yeah, so I didn't see any of that. So I didn't find out until I read it on Wikipedia.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't know, just dinosaur on dinosaur action, to say it in probably a poor way, it was just not for me, really.
I respect that. I can understand. Yeah, yeah. Have you got any concluding points, buddy?
Nothing more for me.
I'd love to hear your rating, man.
Right. So I think that, as I said, this doesn't feel too much like the original. It builds on the original. It builds on the world established there. It feels like a direct sequel to the first film, which I think is probably the right way to go about it, because I don't think any of the other two sequels, The Lost World and Jurassic Park Jurassic Park 3. I don't think they captured the magic of the first film in the same sense that this film manages to. So I have to give it huge respect for that. And I've never seen a film, be a new entry into a franchise and have such a cast that I so widely accept. I think their introduction of new characters was exceptionally successful. So I would give the film a 9 out of 10.
Awesome, buddy. I agree with everything you've said. I think this film's a perfect reboot in so many ways. And I think it's like a very underrated. Like, I haven't heard a lot of praise for this film, really. I know it did great at the box office, but I think this is right up there for me with Jurassic Park 2 is my favorite one, but Jurassic Park 1 for you, I would imagine. And so I'd give it a 10. I have massive nostalgia for this film, and when it came out, and I'm a huge fan. So I think it's definitely got a good rewatchability to it because it's so well shot as well, which we haven't even mentioned. It's so colorful. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this one.
Yeah, I was I thought for a moment, like, how can you have nostalgia? And then I remember, I mean, this did come out 5 years ago when we were 13, so we were still, children by every account. So I suppose, it just seems odd that this came out so recently, but yeah,
Yeah,
we were young enough to be
I know, man,
nostalgic
it's
about it.
crazy. I know. But yeah. So did you want to move into our second film then, buddy? Yeah.
Yes, sure. So the second film that we're going to talk about today is Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, a film which was critically not well received. I would say it was probably mixed, a mixed reception. So
Yeah.
going into this, I did not have high expectations. Was it a success for you when watching this?
You know what it is, man? Like, I remember when this film came out in 2018. Well, I actually don't remember. It just completely blew past me at the time, and I don't know. I knew it came out in that year, but I don't remember ever watching a trailer for it or anything like that. It sort of passed me by. So no, this is the first viewing for me, and I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. I think it's okay. It's not too bad. It's
Yeah.
not too bad.
I never saw the trailer because I wanted to go and see the film fresh. I never did end up going to see the film, but I'd intended to. And people sort of said that it seemed to reveal everything about the film. But I think that was because people falsely, including myself, believed that the sequence with like the lava and the explosions on the island was going to be the third act. And
Yeah,
they thought that revealed too much, but that turns out to be the first act, which is incredibly bizarre but very
absolutely.
interesting. So
Incredibly so.
I think that's maybe why people didn't necessarily go into the film with good expectations, and then that sort of carried over to their reception of the film.
You know what it is, man? Like, I didn't know the runtime of this film, so I was like going into it, and I assumed it was like 40 minutes in, and we were already at like volcano eruption scene, and I was like, is this like a short film or something? Because I thought that was like the film has a really quick pace, so it does like that, and it's incredibly bizarre, like you said, buddy, and it sort of subverts your expectations in a good way, I suppose, because I don't know if in a good way, because I think that first action scene is the best in the film, and then it gets worse for me personally. But I don't know. It was an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that this trilogy seems to be following the bare bones of the original Jurassic Park trilogy. The first film was sort of the reintroduction to the world, and it was one dinosaur escapes, and then it's like a domino effect of
Yeah,
everything, and then the park is basically destroyed. That's basically the bare bones of the first film and
sure.
Jurassic World. And then this film is they return to the island, to do basically reconnaissance or recovery, same as in the Lost World Jurassic Park. And then a weirdly significant amount of the film, surprising amount, actually takes place, back on the mainland,
Yeah,
which is something when the Lost World came out, that was something that we hadn't seen from the franchise. So it was sort of it was less interesting here because we had already seen it, and I think that structurally it was very similar to the Lost World,
completely, man.
too similar for my feelings on it.
Yeah, man. And it's weird because I think the film, the opening scene of the film is perhaps the strangest scene of all, because it sort of harkens back to like the original Jurassic Park films of like and certainly the first film, opens with like a dinosaur attacking humans and stuff on the island, and it's sort of shot like a horror film. But then I don't know, it feels so disenfranchised from the rest of the film, and like weirdly, a lot of my notes are about that first scene. Like, do you ever get when you're making notes in a film and you think you're going to have loads, so you just make notes about sort of insignificant points at the start of the film that end up don't go anywhere? Do you ever do like that when
Yeah,
you're making notes? So,
sometimes, yeah.
like for me, like I've just got really weird notes here. Like even the weird video game style opening credits on the lava. I thought that was so weird.
Yeah, it was kind of bizarre, and so sort of go back to the horror-esque scene.
Mhm.
It did kind of come across as inauthentic that people would be that inept when dealing with the dinosaurs, because as you said, it is very similar to say the first Jurassic Park film, but that was unprecedented times when like people were feeding the dinosaurs and
Yeah,
didn't know how they would react. But like these people are exceptionally prepared. They know for a fact they're going to an island full of dinosaurs and they come with guns, even though they know that the dinosaurs are bulletproof, and they come with like one helicopter. They just seem
yeah,
so stupid all the
yeah.
time. Like no one seems to have adjusted to the idea that dinosaurs exist and that there are ways to combat them, and they just
Exactly.
try stupid trivial things that they know aren't going to work.
I know. Like, there's literally a line, and when the guys are like, the guy says something like rumbling in the bushes, and he's like, "What is that?" I was like, "You're literally on an island full of dinosaurs, buddy. It's a dinosaur," you know?
Yeah, people are like screaming at, like I understand he can't hear them, but you can see when someone's screaming at you and they're like, beckoning him to come to the helicopter and he's like, oh, what could be behind me?
Yeah,
I fucking wonder
exactly.
what.
Yeah, and one thing about that scene, like, how is that Mosasaurus surviving without any food under that water? I don't know what the time difference is, but like, surely it's about to be dead.
I suppose maybe it broke out of its habitat and was able to, venture out into sort of
I
the
suppose,
Costa
yeah.
Rican Sea and live off
Yeah,
of just,
because we
you
see it
know,
by the end of the film, don't we?
yeah. So I suppose it just lived off of other sea life.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't understand how it would have remained fed, but there was what was the dinosaur in the opening scene that was running
I think that
after
was the
that
T-Rex.
character?
I think it was the T-Rex.
Yeah, so I would say the big question is probably how he survived, but I guess we see like a lot of dinosaurs survived, which I don't
Yeah,
really understand because there's no one there to feed them meat. So I wonder how fuck, how the carnivores survived.
yeah,
I get that
yeah.
some dinosaurs eat other dinosaurs, but we see a shit ton of dinosaurs, and it's been like 4 years. So you would have thought if all of the carnivores were living off of other dinosaurs, they would have quickly made themselves extinct again.
Yeah. It's a great point, man. It's a great point, and I'm just happy to go by your notes on this one, buddy. Actually, I don't have a huge amount to say. Actually, I thought I had more, but I know I don't have a lot.
Yeah, so this film and sort of is indicative of the franchise of just, every person who claims to be a genius scientist is just a complete idiot
Yeah,
because every time they try to come up with a clever solution for sorting out the dinosaurs, they're just like, I don't know, move them to another island.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
they've done this, like twice before. Basically, they were created on the original island, then moved to Site B, then back to Site A. Although they never actually referenced the fact that like the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 take place on Jurassic Park Site B, but they never actually explain in Jurassic World how they moved the dinosaurs from Site B
Yeah,
back to Site A
yeah.
and why they did that. Like,
Hmm.
if that was, obviously all of these events are taking place on the island from the original film. And I suppose that was just to create a sense of nostalgia, but it's also the site of like dozens of brutal murders. So like what it's like building like a playground on like a graveyard.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah,
you're building like a monument of success, like to
it's a great
some
point.
place where you're building a dinosaur sanctuary somewhere where a bunch of dinosaurs murdered a bunch of people, and
Exactly.
then
It's not
obviously
fitting,
that
is it?
happens again and you're surprised.
Yeah, it's a bit, yeah, it is. It's a strange one, man. And I suppose this film tries to like harken back to our nostalgia by bringing Ian Malcolm back. And
Yes.
he is barely in it. To be fair, like he's in it for like what, a couple minutes, given a Senate
Yeah, he's
hearing.
criminally underused.
And you know what it is, like the kind of, we like to get into moral sort of debates and discussions here in the channel as well. And in the first film, and sorry, in Jurassic World, there's like a line where I think Vincent D'Onofrio's character goes like, "Oh, I have it here somewhere." He says, "Extinct animals have no rights," and here we see like Ian Malcolm say, dinosaurs were destined to go extinct, so they should just let them die in the volcano. And it kind of got me thinking, like, technically they are man-made like they're not natural creatures anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like they're not like
Yeah.
naturally produced. So like I don't, because I love animals, and I honestly do, and I'm huge supporter of animal rights, but in that case, I think rescuing them and bringing them back to the mainland is a recipe for chaos. So I think maybe leaving them on the islands is probably was okay, just to die by the volcano. But that sounds really bad. Do you know what I mean? I probably would have let them die in the volcano.
Yeah, because I mean, in the end, you know, there's like there's there's a hierarchy of society where humans should look after humans first, animals secondary, and then these like genetic creations, which they aren't really animals because they're you know they are created,
Yeah,
and
they're a
they're
combination
they're
of
they're
different animals as well, I suppose. In a
yeah,
way.
so it's a species that's never existed. It wasn't, created naturally. It was created by scientists in a lab, which doesn't mean it's not alive, because uh, but
I know what you
it
mean. I know what
is
you mean.
a genetic creation, like that's not natural, that never naturally occurs in nature.
Yeah,
And if natural selection decides that it's their time to go extinct, and like what's more timely than a volcano erupting? Like it seems like the
who would
dinosaurs were
argue? Yeah,
chosen for extinction twice. So yeah, to save them, it just feels that I just feel that, like, humans' top priority should be protecting themselves, so they shouldn't endanger other humans by trying to go and save dinosaurs.
it's a great point, man. And like you said about the natural selection argument, it sort of does fit. Like, yeah, natural selection chose dinosaurs to go extinct. Call it destiny, call it fate, call it whatever you want. Like that was a fixed point in history, and so in this film, like I know I'm talking about it as if it happens in real life, but let's say it did happen in real life, like this exact thing happened in real life. Do you think humanity would see it? Like, because we see in this film, humanity decides not to rescue them. I think that probably would be humanity's decision, to be honest. But what do you think would happen?
Yeah, I think that humans have obviously, we have huge developments in science. I don't think we'll ever get to, at least in our lifetimes, sorry, like
Okay.
that we've had genetic cloning of a sheep, but we haven't yet cloned a human. And I don't think we're anywhere near the point of creating dinosaurs. And I think even if we had the technology, it wouldn't happen. I feel like the government, you know like they sort of talk about the illegality of the fact that they've created these dinosaurs, which makes me wonder why none of them are arrested. But
Yeah.
let's not get into that.
Yeah.
We've sort of spoken a lot about that in our Jurassic Park episode, which you should check out right now.
Absolutely.
Uh, you know,
Love it.
Obviously all of those people should be in prison because they've committed an array of crimes. And I feel like the government in real life is, too on the back of scientists, to let something like this happen. So one, I don't think it would happen in the first place. And two, if it did, if they were created by American scientists, those dinosaurs are going to die. Like
Yeah.
they're gonna. I mean, it's weird to me that the American government or any Americans took responsibility for the creation of these dinosaurs, because that sort of like puts a negative perspective on the United States, because they've sort of they've created these dinosaurs and then like hidden them away in Costa Rica. So I think right now, if that happened and America were responsible for creating a bunch of dinosaurs and then hid them on an island in Costa Rica, they would also, just launch a huge cover up to make it seem like it never happened. They
Yeah.
would men in black us. They
Yeah.
would they would
Yeah.
try and
Memory
remove the
markers and
memories,
stuff.
or at least correct history.
Yeah.
I don't think I think that, like, if this happened in reality, they would just be left to die on the island.
Yeah, it's a cool discussion, because like we've talked about this in the original film as well, about like the scientific realism there. Like it's not a million miles away, but it's probably not, definitely not in our lifetimes, I'd imagine. But we've cloned a sheep before, like Dolly the sheep, I suppose. What was that, like late 90s, I think, or something? So
Yeah,
you
I
never
believe
know, it's
so.
possible. But
Yes, and as we sort of talked about, it does turn out that the intention is to just capture the dinosaurs to traffic them. But initially we are led to believe that they're launching just a rescue plan to put them on a different island, and Claire is completely convinced. But they launched this alleged rescue on the day that the island is erupting.
Yeah,
Like what, they talk about it on the news, days or weeks before we see the rescue attempt actually happen. So, you know, the traffickers have known about the potential for the volcano to erupt, and they knew that it was upcoming. So, like, why wouldn't they just launch it immediately? Why
yeah,
did they
I
go through
know.
all the hullabaloo and then wait to actually do the rescue on the day that it's
I
erupting?
know.
Like, it just seems so unnecessarily dangerous.
Yeah, and on the subject of like the volcano eruption as well, it's sort of this film sort of really put into perspective how tragic the dinosaur extinction must have been. Like it must have been absolutely terrifying at the time. Like, can you imagine like an asteroid like crashed on Earth now? Like, hoping it doesn't, but like it must have been. It's a really tragic experience because there are marvelous creatures, and we'll definitely never, we'll probably never see them again. We certainly won't in our lifetime. So it is sad, and it was sort of, I think this film really encapsulated that really well.
Yeah, I mean, fuck my life, extinction level event is obviously going to be
Yeah,
horrific for any species that's experiencing it. But I do think that sometimes it isn't humanity's fault. Humanity can't stop a volcano from erupting. They can't stop an asteroid.
yeah,
So, like humans have been, the cause for, some extinctions due to just extensive global warming, for example.
yeah,
But, it's horrible to watch. The idea that these animals were going to go extinct because of a volcano, but also uh, we know that if we ever go extinct, it's no one's fault. So it's very sad to see, but at least no one is blameworthy in it.
yeah. And that's sort of the heartbreaking thing about now in our modern age, where it's global warming is the thing that's prominently making animals go extinct, and over an excessive poaching, isn't it? And that's even more heartbreaking in many ways because like we see like all different species of rhino in Africa, they're extinct because of poachers and stuff, and that angers me, and it sort of it is tragic, isn't it, in many ways?
Yeah, and definitely it's even more awful now. Even sort of like with as you said, hunters and poachers. They're killing animals, like, and they're not killing the entire species. But they're killing one animal one by one. So they're also taking people away from their families, and
Hmm.
like probably taking mothers away from their children, and
Absolutely.
and killing them, and then but then there are still you still leave animals left to grieve for them. So I mean, it's horrific.
It is, man, completely. And credit to the film for making us just consider that as well. I thought it really did the whole volcano eruption thing really well, actually.
Yes. So what have I written here? That's interesting. Um, yes. So you wanted to talk about Toby Jones and his let's just
Yeah.
say horrific American accent. So I just wanted to ask you, like, why do studios pay to have actors like Toby Jones in their films?
So
Uh,
British.
he's so British, and so many actors are forced to do this. We talked about Katie McGrath, and there's always one character in an American film who is doing a needless accent.
Yeah.
Because this character that he plays is an auctioneer. It's not a huge part, but it's played by Toby Jones, who is a huge British actor. But this character isn't established in history. He isn't established in fiction. So why is he American? Like,
I
why
know.
does he have to be American?
Yeah, I
Like
know.
we talked about this with like Benedict Cumberbatch, because the character of
Yeah,
Doctor
he's
Strange is established in the comics as an American character, so you can understand why they would force him to do an American accent.
yeah,
But it's not good, and they're just using him for his name. So if you're just going to use him for his name, why not enable him to give the best performance he can by using his actual accent? Because I
yeah,
mean, like you have to admit, like, that anybody using their like actual accent, it's always a better performance.
absolutely. And like, yeah, not to be so like I don't know, is candid the right word, but like Toby Jones
Yeah,
is definitely the most British man I've ever seen. Do you know what I mean? Like he's so British, and I like that's a good thing. Like he's such a nice, charismatic actor, and he seems like a really sweet person as well. I remember him in the Graham Norton show as well. He seemed really nice, and well, that brings up another question in my mind, which was has just escaped my head actually. What was it? What was it? What was it? It'll come back to me anyway. But like, yeah, on the Graham Norton show, I think wasn't he telling the story about like how he's been with his wife for like 26 years and only been married once or something, isn't it? or 1 year, sorry.
Yeah. They've been married an incredibly short time, in comparison to the length of their relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, like I would have liked to see him embrace his Britishness here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I would say literally the only time anyone ever has to do an accent that isn't their own would be, if they're playing a historical character that they look like and they just need the voice
Mm.
to accompany it. Because
Yeah.
then, literally I would say any other character in any film you can just say, I mean, like, how is it ridiculous that someone from England could live in America?
Yeah.
Plenty do, and there are plenty in the Jurassic Park franchise. So why can he just be another one of those people?
Yeah.
And it's not just a problem here; it's a
Completely.
problem in almost every film because, as I said, pretty much every film has someone doing a fake accent, but it's just so needless.
Yeah, I know, and it kind of got me. That's yeah. The point that escaped me a second ago was, and I wanted to ask you this: do you think it annoys like diehard Superman or Spider-Man fans, or just Americans in general, that Superman and Spider-Man are played by British actors? Do you think that would annoy people? Would it annoy you? Because I think their accents are good, especially Henry Cavill's American accent. But if you were a diehard American or a diehard Spider-Man or Superman fan, which I know you are, I suppose, like
Yeah.
how would you feel about that? Because I'd imagine it probably would annoy some people, but I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose if you sort of associated these characters with huge American culture, and I think Superman is definitely probably the bigger example because I
Yeah,
feel like Spider-Man, his nationality isn't really important. I would say if you slapped like a British person in the role of Captain America, that would be certainly questionable, and maybe Superman to a certain degree because I feel that I assume that Henry Cavill is probably he's probably one of the first Englishmen to have played Superman. So for superheroes, there's like there is a comic book and source material context to that character.
yeah,
They have an established continuity in which they are from a certain country. So I would kind of understand some criticisms of that, but certainly like characters like Doctor Strange can just be rewritten as an Englishman. If you're so desperate to have Benedict Cumberbatch in that role, just have him do an English accent because
yeah.
their performance is never going to be as good because it's adding like an unnecessary level of difficulty to their performance by just saying, "Oh, also your performance is being hidden by an accent."
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll definitely talk about like best and worst Hollywood accents and a podcast or a video someday. But 'cause that would be a fun one to do. But look, I think in general British actors are getting better at doing American accents. Like Charlie Cox and Henry Cavill for me are two standouts there who really nail it. But then when you've got like Benedict Cumberbatch, Tom Holland, they aren't great American accents, but I suppose they're serviceable in many ways.
I think almost every fake accent I hear, like the vast majority of them are great, but I'm just like, why are you doing that?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
in what way is this important to the character? If someone cast you thinking, oh, I really love, like, I mean, this is a weird example, but I watched The Good Doctor, which is a TV show, and it stars Freddie Highmore from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and he's incredibly English, and he does one of the best American accents I've ever heard. But if someone's cast him because they're like, oh, I love him in this thing, and I love his performance, he's such a great actor, let's make him do an American accent. It's like then you haven't really hired them. You've hired them with a caveat.
Yeah, it's a good point.
You're not asking for their performance. You're asking for a different kind of performance, and it just confuses me because I'm sure there are two actors that are incredibly similar, have the same energy, they look similar, they can play the same character. One's English, one's American, and they don't go with the American. They just go with the English person and go, but do a fake American
Yeah,
accent. It's like
yeah.
I'm sure you can hire an actor of the same caliber. If you're so desperate for that character to be an American, I guess hire an American.
Why do you
I
think it
mean, I
is
suppose it
though?
gives them more opportunities.
Do you think it's
I
like
think it's just so that they can have a
American
big
just to make it
name.
American?
I think well, I think they make people from different places do an American accent to keep it American, as you said. Uh, and it does give opportunities to British actors to be in big American films. But I mean, if you saw an American film and one of the main characters was English, you wouldn't go ugh. Like you just go, okay, it's a Hollywood film that has a British actor playing a British character. Like I don't know how that makes it un-American.
I know it's a weird one, man, and I never actually considered it in that detail before. So it is an interesting debate.
I mean, it's weird that it came out in our Jurassic World
Yeah.
discussion, but like it annoys me every time I see a
Yeah,
film.
I can
Like
understand that. Yeah.
I've mentioned the film like Time Freak, which it was called Time After Time in America, and it stars Isa Butterfield and Sophie Turner. So they're playing the two leads. They're both British, and they're both doing fake American accents, and I don't understand it because
Yeah,
then just like if the majority of your main cast is English, either set it in England or say, like how difficult is it to just
I know.
change the
Yeah,
location to England, or just say, oh, these two characters are English and that's what drew them to each other.
yeah,
Just
I
just
know.
say, there aren't that many people that there aren't that many English people in America, so they felt a sense of comfort because they were both English. It's like it's one line that you can just add in, and that adds complete context to them being
Absolutely,
in America as a British
completely.
person, and then you get to hire whoever you want to
Yeah,
play the character.
I'd like to see Hollywood sort of abandon that stereotype of British actors or any actor, Australian actors or New Zealand actors or anything, put on an American accent, because just do your normal accents, guys. I think it even would. I think an actor always acts better in their own accent for me personally, but
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
mean, I'm sure the conversation's getting repetitive at this point for the listeners, but
But
sometimes
it
it is
is. It's
integral to the
interesting though.
character, but when it isn't,
Yeah,
just abandon it. Because I
yeah,
mean, as you said about Australians, Margot Robbie in Suicide Squad is doing quite an unconvincing American accent, and they clearly just hired her. I mean, she's a great Harley Quinn, but I'm sure there's an American actress who could play the character just as well.
Haley
Like
Cuoco. Yeah.
they've clearly, oh, she's incredible in the Harley Quinn animated series. So I mean, they've clearly just hired her because she's an A-list talent. They've
Yeah.
just hired her for her name, and that's what plenty of movies do. And then they have them do a fake American accent. It's bad, but it receives critical praise because they're a big name.
Yeah. So it's we're standing up against that.
Yeah, we do not support.
Yeah,
Either I mean, how difficult is it to just say
I know.
they're an English person that lives in America?
Yeah. Anyway, it is annoying.
Anyway,
It's annoying.
it is, but that was a weird tangent to go on, but it needed
Interesting
to
though.
be said.
Interesting nonetheless.
Yes. So this, I would say, is the first Justice Smith performance that I've enjoyed. I don't know if you know Justice Smith.
Pokemon, right?
Yes, from Detective Pikachu.
Yeah.
He was very bad in that film, and was very bad in all the bright places. I believe the film was called. It was a Netflix film that released a few months ago. He's real bad in that film, but in this he gives a really great comedic performance.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and like I think there's a lot of great comedy in this film. And I wanted to ask you, the old guy? I think it's Benjamin Lockwood they call him. He kind of reminds me of a older James Cameron with a beard.
Yeah, I definitely see that, and it was sort of alarming to me because I mean, there's such a weird crossover where filmmakers and TV makers have like parallel thoughts with character names. You have so many names to pick from, but like this character shares his name with a character in Supergirl called Ben
Oh,
Lockwood,
cool.
and like it's just weird to me because it's such a. I mean, it's not a popular name, so it's just weird that two films
Yeah,
would pick, because obviously if there were 10 films starring a character called John Smith, like obviously that's understandable, but there's millions and there's millions of combinations of names to choose from, and it's just weird to me that that ever happens.
I know it is, man. And you know, he's the same guy that plays Captain Stacy, isn't he, in Spider-Man 3?
Oh shit, is he? I had
I
no
think
idea.
so. I looked on Wikipedia, and like it's oh sorry, his Wikipedia, and it said it was in Spider-Man 3, but I assume he was Captain Stacy if he was in that film, but I don't think he would. Yeah, I don't know what other character he could have been, but interesting if it was him.
Yeah, thinking about it, yeah, that's really
That's weird.
interesting. And do him and Bryce Dallas Howard share a scene in this film?
I don't think so. I think he dies. There's me laughing about
Because
death again.
because I know
Yeah.
she's like told to come to the estate, and she's like, oh yeah, I can't wait to go to the Lockwood estate. But yeah, I think she's just greeted by the guy, Mr. Mills, and then yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know that she does interact with him.
and
But
that
if
whole
if she if
subplot.
he if he played her dad in Spider-Man 3, like
Yeah,
they should have shared at least a scene
I
together.
know. See that whole like Lockwood family estate subplot where it's like Maisie's a clone daughter of Ben Lockwood, who couldn't also have a granddaughter, like John Hammond had a granddaughter, but also the granddad doesn't believe his own granddaughter that Mr. Mills is secretly a bad guy. It was so shit. I thought it was just a hodgepodge of nothingness.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was again sort of that was again a rehash of the Lost World.
Yeah,
Where it's where the big human villain of that film is John Hammond's nephew, who's trying to seize power from him by getting the dinosaurs. That was pretty much this same dynamic, but he was like a protege of Benjamin Lockwood. So yeah, that was a bizarre subplot. And when she sort of like looked at the photo, and I thought it was just a picture of her,
good
but
guy.
it
Yeah,
was it was a picture of her mother and the nanny, I think, and sort of like the music swelled, and it was meant to be like this implicit realization. I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
yeah,
So like
yeah.
I Wikipedia'd it because I didn't understand
Me
it,
too. I did the
and
exact
then
same.
I, and then because I thought it was just going to be like a subtle implicit revelation, and I was like, well, I didn't understand that whatsoever. And then they very explicitly like yelled out like, "You're a clone,
Yeah,
dump
yeah,
me." Like
yeah,
I was expecting like I thought that I had just missed the implicit clue, and I wasn't smart enough for this film. But also
yeah.
then they dumb it down
And the
for
thing
people
is,
like me.
that I was the same man as the same, so don't worry about it. But like the whole cloning aspect, now that humans can be cloned in this universe, it kind of gets rid of all stakes for me for Owen and Claire in the future. So if Owen and Claire are killed off in Dominion, they're gonna say, "Oh yeah, we cloned them, but it's fine." They'll be like, do you know what I mean? Like obviously they'll be born, so they'll be like 30 years younger or whatever. But like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Hopefully
I
they
just
don't do
don't
that.
see. Yeah, I just don't see a clone as the same thing as a person because like they're created from a person. They're not created by people.
Yeah.
Uh, in the sense that you can have children who are born as a result of science. With a sperm and an egg, and then that's implanted because that's that's how in vitro fertilization works. But cloning is an entirely different story. I just that they're like a piece of a person that is then made to make a
Replicated.
copy. Like they're not a human in their own right. They're a copy of a human. And
Mhm.
yeah, I just don't see it as the same thing. So I still do think there are stakes because I just don't see clones
Yeah,
in a human light.
I get you. I do get you. And it kind of got me thinking about Spider-Man animated series and like Mary Jane, like Hydro Man clones. Remember that? Good times.
Yeah, that was fucking weird.
Mary Jane! Warren, where the
Watching
blazes
that as
are
an
you?
18-year-old is bizarre.
Warren, where the blazes are. Oh man, what a show. What a show.
It doesn't make any more sense as I watch it as an adult though.
Any more points from you, buddy?
Yes, so
Go
once
for it.
again we see a fairly a fairly similar climactic battle in this film, and I just think that they like for them to move on from this being the fifth film in the franchise, and then the next film being the sixth. They just need to find a more creative and satisfying solution than just the humans distract the dinosaur, and then another dinosaur fights that dinosaur,
It's a
and then
great point.
one of the dinosaurs is killed. Like that's just if they do that again, I will just completely check out of this franchise. I mean, I
Yeah,
already have the feeling that I don't want to see it anymore after Dominion. I was pretty much done with this franchise after the first film because I was like, well, they can't improve on perfection, and they should have just stopped there because they've made a run of like pretty good films. But I mean, why would you make a pretty good sequel to like an exceptional film?
exactly.
When you could
Exactly.
have just left it there. So I feel like if they try to go on past Dominion, they're definitely beating a dead horse.
Agreed. Yeah, or a dead dinosaur. Am I right? But no, I do agree with you, man. Like, I think just it's the whole ending of this film, the Indoraptor felt like a sort of a rip off Indominus Rex, but also the Indominus Rex I think would absolutely crush that thing if they were in an actual fight. So it sort of felt like a worse version of that, but also its death was really underwhelming. I thought, it even it looks it's always shot in the dark, and it was really weird to see dinosaurs fight in a house. It sort of like
Yeah.
de-escalates the action for me. It kind of felt like do you know what I mean? Like it felt like it was just, oh, it's just a little house, it's just a little house fight. They'll be fine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you move them from like an inescapable island where they're being hunted down by these dinosaurs. So by these dinosaurs to being like trapped in a little mansion that they can just like fuck off out the front door.
Exactly,
Yeah. And
exactly.
then
Yeah,
like as you said, like this is meant to be the most intimidating dinosaur we've ever seen, like the most lethal predator. And then I guess they've bred it with the intelligence of the Velociraptor and like the ferocity of the Indominus Rex, but by breeding it with the Velociraptor, they've made it infinitely more small. So yeah, it
yeah,
probably could just be like stepped on by a huge dinosaur.
yeah.
And the fact that like the dinosaurs in these films are largely bulletproof, and then this one's just impaled and dies. Like it was very underwhelming.
Yeah, yeah. Like I thought the Indominus Rex was superior in every way. It looked cool. It could camouflage. I don't think this dinosaur could camouflage. It's also pretty smart as well, and also it's huge. So I thought the Indominus Rex was way better. But I don't have that much points really left about the film, man. I think from you.
Just this film sort of shows us the dangers of cloning, because you can produce an absolute fuckwit like Maisie, who just says that she couldn't just see the dinosaurs die, but she will release them and let them go kill an infinite amount of humans.
Yeah, that's sort of a thing I wanted. Like, I don't mean to be. I know we've talked about my love of death on the channel, and I don't. I'm a very. I don't like death. I'm a positive guy, but and I don't want to say, I don't want to sound bad, but like obviously I don't want the dinosaurs to die in like a gas explosion or anything like that, or like suffocate to death. But they're gonna kill thousands of people, the carnivores at
Yeah,
least.
yeah. I mean, there were what, like maybe like 2 dozen dinosaurs there. There weren't a huge amount. So you're gonna let like, I mean, sure, like, I mean, it seems like they took a lot more, and then it seemed like a lot more were let loose on the world. But I
Yeah,
mean, it was a pretty tiny room, like and that was where apparently all the dinosaurs were being kept. So I
yeah,
mean, it seemed like there were a few dozen or something. So it's like either let a few dozen dinosaurs die, or as you said, like thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands. Because I mean, like even an entire army can't take down one dinosaur. So that's like one army to every dinosaur. So that's like every army in the world against like a few hundred dinosaurs, and we don't know how many have been released, and they're going to breed. They're going to have more dinosaurs, and then rinse and repeat until like everyone on Earth is dead.
yeah. I get it, and like I sort of get the idea. Like, okay, it's restoring the world to like its natural cycle, but it's anything but natural because they weren't supposed to exist anyway at this point in time. Anyway, like we see by the end of the film, it's like okay, they've acknowledged their place in the food chain, or at least the carnivores have anyway. So the humans should be scared and should learn to coexist with them in like a human dinosaur hybrid society. But it's, I don't know. I thought that was a really confusing decision. I wouldn't have said like I wouldn't have said if I was in Maisie's or Claire's or Owen's position, I would have let the dinosaurs die. But I don't think I would have released them into the wild. Maybe not a great idea. Because what if I like break into, like we see the T Rex breaks into a zoo. All the like we see like that's a whole host of problems if those zoo animals get out. So like those zoo
I
animals
was
are
just
like,
gonna say that's just like a restaurant to him
yeah, I know.
or to
Yeah,
her.
I thought the lion T Rex shot was cool, but no, I don't know. Like, I suppose it leads on to Dominion in a cool way. We'll see where that goes from there. And but no, it's an interesting one, man. It's an interesting one.
Yeah. Do you think that Dominion will be sort of this like ravaged post-apocalyptic world, or do you think it'll be like some sort of idealistic utopia where they live side by side?
And I hope it's like sort of like a Planet of the Apes sort of vibe, where it's like a few years later. Have you seen Dawn of the Planet of the Apes? Yeah.
I have, yeah.
So I hope it's like that sort of vibe where humanity still exists, but like they're not coexisting well. Like humanity is struggling and stuff. I think it'll be very similar to that. I actually think it's going to be exactly like that. But what do you think it'll be like?
Yeah, I mean, sort of the title Dominion sort of screams, dominant control by the dinosaurs. And I mean, if they do, I agree with you. I think it will probably seem like it'll scream of like a ripoff of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. But I think I mean, that is the freshest direction they could take the franchise. I think,
Absolutely.
because I mean, you can't just have them go to another island full of dinosaurs, run about and be like, oh, what are we meant to do?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
there's been decades of research done, on how to deal with these dinosaurs in real life. So I mean, taking them into the real world is already fresh and original, and then having them sort of take over the world. I guess it's different to Planet of the Apes because you can't communicate with the dinosaurs in the same way, so
Yeah.
that there's no way of like reasoning with them. So you have to find a way to to struggle back to the top of the food chain. At least in the Planet of the Apes, there was some sense of you could like coordinate and live like Caesar was sort of a reasonable leader, and you could sort of you could reason with him that you don't deserve to die because you didn't negatively impact his existence.
Mhm.
Only the people that really ruined life for the apes got killed at like the end of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So I do think it. I think that is probably the direction they're going to go, and I think that's probably the most interesting way they could take it.
Yeah, I think it's either going to be a Dawn of the Planet of the Apes scenario, or like a weird like War of the Planet of the Apes scenario where like humanity is like enslaved dinosaurs, because we see by the end like there's the dinosaurs that have been bought at the auction are still going to their buyers. So it could be like, I think it could be either one of those two films for me personally. I think the first one would be more interesting, like to see the dinosaurs thrive. But I don't know, like it wouldn't surprise me if they end up like, say they found another planet, so they're just jetting off the dinosaurs to another Earth or something like that. You never know with these franchises
No,
these days.
I literally watched this film and I was like, okay, there are a few places they could take this, but don't take this into space.
Yeah,
I was like they could easily do that because they've obviously they've done that before with Planet of the Apes with I mean, yeah, I'm not going to spoil the very first Planet of the Apes films, but a lot of that is considered. There's interdimensional travel. There's future travel potentially. There's there's a lot of space exploration in those original films of
yeah.
that franchise. I don't know if you've seen like the Charlton Heston
Haven't seen the
Planet of the
original
Apes.
one.
No,
No.
it's a bit more spacey, and that's not a place that I want to see this franchise go.
Yeah, and have you got any concluding points for this film, man? Well, I suppose after that we can sort of talk into our hopes and aspirations for the third film. But anything from you?
Yeah, no, nothing more from me. Anything
Uh,
else from you?
well, one thing I wanted to mention was, my favorite scene in the film was, when there's like one dinosaur left on the island that no one bothered to like bring with them. Do you know, like there's
I don't recall that.
do you know like the ferry is like leaving the island. There's just like one dinosaur just like stranded, just like help me. Do you know that?
No, I didn't
Oh,
see that.
that broke me. That was really heartbreaking. But anyway, nothing else from me. Yeah, I'd love to hear your reading, buddy.
Yeah, so I do think that I would say that the climactic kill of the big dinosaur villain of the film was incredibly underwhelming, and I suppose that could be used to describe this entire film. I do think it's a bit of a rehash of the Lost World.
Yeah,
There's not a lot of new ground covered, but it did subvert my expectations because I expected all of that like island action to be the third act of the film, and I was very surprised that finished by the first act.
yeah.
So it did surprise me, but it didn't feel like very much new. It didn't feel like it didn't feel new enough. So I'd probably give it a 7.5 or an 8.
I respect that, man. I agree completely. I think this is a perfectly serviceable sequel. It doesn't recapture the magic of Jurassic World or Jurassic Park, really for me, but it's still okay. It's not a bad film. Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard are very charismatic leads, and we've talked about the accent issue and how it's similar to The Lost World. So I'd probably give it an 8 as well. It's still good, so pretty good so far. I think this trilogy has potential. I suppose did you want to move on to your hopes and aspirations for the third film then?
Yes. So we know that this will be the first time that the trinity of
Yeah.
Jeff Goldblum, Sam Neill, and Laura Dern will be reunited since the very first Jurassic Park film. And I would say my biggest issues and the reasons that The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 didn't capture the magic was because both of those films failed to realize that the chemistry between those three characters is what made the first film so special.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they finally realized that, and that's probably the biggest thing that I'm excited for that they've officially announced.
I hope it's not just like a wee cameo or something. I hope it's like they're actual integral parts of the film.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they used Jeff Goldblum's role in this film to just, in Fallen Kingdom to just, have him address Congress or the Senate or whatever board that he was addressing. So I think that if this film does take a Dawn of the Planet of the Apes style post-apocalyptic world, where the dinosaurs are now on top of the food chain. I don't think you can't have that sort of like modern civilized, go into a courtroom and address, or
Yeah,
like go into this government building and address whoever. So I think they're forced to have these characters interact with the new characters. Like if you're gonna have them in the film, I think they are going to be an integral part of the story.
that's going to be great. And so the one thing I wanted to mention to you, we didn't really cover about the second film, but I think it was very clear that it was directed by a different person. So I'm glad Colin Sharper was back for the third one.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think stylistically, uh, it took on even more of an action film sort of stereotype. There was a lot of action film tropes, and I think just having like when they were on the island, like, oh, let's blow this whole place up. There's a volcano exploding, there's fire everywhere.
Yeah,
It did feel very action filmy, and it didn't recapture sort of the horror or the sci-fi of like every other film that came before it. So yeah, I agree. It felt very different, and I'm also very glad to see Colin back at the helm.
absolutely. I'd be interested to see if it doesn't. It'll be it'll be very strange to me if it didn't go as a post-apocalyptic sort of setting for the film. Like it probably could work not like that as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go with it, and it's going to be sad because it's the last time we'll probably see all these characters together, like Chris Pratt and stuff, and Bryce Dallas Howard together, because I think it's the third and final one in the trilogy, isn't it?
I have to assume so, and I think they should know when to stop. Because I can't imagine that they have any more material to like draw out after this film.
Yeah,
Like I think this franchise has been done for a while, and they've sort of coasted by with like really good films, but it's never been as good as the very first film for me. And I think a lot of them feel the same. You could say that that's just like tonal consistency, but I think when you're this consistent story wise, it just feels repetitive. So
yeah,
unless they have incredibly new ground to cover, which I can't imagine they do, I think this should be the final film.
agreed, buddy. Do you have any more remarks, buddy, or do you want me to wrap up?
No, no, that's probably all for me. I think we hashed out some of our ideas. Even at the end of our review for Fallen Kingdom. So I feel that all that we've said are pretty much what would satisfy me in this
Yeah.
film.
Also, we actually this ended up being a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. So it was a good discussion with you today, buddy.
Yeah, great to see you, Matthew.
Likewise, man. Likewise. So, yes, thank you to everyone who has recently supported us. Thank you, Callum, for today as well. And yeah, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and leave your thoughts on these films down below. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on Dominion and what you'd like to see from that film. So, yeah, thank you very much, Callum. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care and bye bye.
Bye bye.